Good morning, evening, and afternoon, and welcome to the SpunkGo webinar. Today's speaker is Zainab Rafeek. She is the founder of a nonprofit organization, Capsules Sinaz, that provides first aid to patients battling cancer and heart diseases, as well as raising awareness for mental health in Sri Lanka. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome Zainab to talk about women's health and education and the importance of it. Just a side note, Q&A will be done through the chat feature where she will answer questions after her presentation. SpunkGo is an all-girls global student organization where the proceeds go to charity. The floor is now all yours, Zainab.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to know whether y'all can actually hear me. Just do see some chat saying I can't hear, so just want to confirm.
I think the majority of us can hear you.
Right, okay. Yeah, so firstly, yes, so currently we have an organization that we started off in Sri Lanka called the Capsaicinas and Lim Foundation. And it provides first aid techniques, and we're still working on it for bringing about the importance of cancer, heart diseases, and mental health in Sri Lanka, and then try to go on to other countries and a worldwide scenario. So the fact that I believe today we all are here from all different countries and different parts of the world just for one sole cause, advocating and learning about how important health is and how does that relate and link to education, because it's very interrelated. But I believe in the women arena, it has not been provided, or there is not a lot of accessibility. So that's something that we are actually going to look into. And if there's any question out there, definitely can ask about that as well. But at the same time, if there is anything that y'all want to clarify, maybe just drop it on the chat box. And once I'm done, I'll try to get back on that. Before that, if there's anyone out here, could just drop a message on the chat box stating how has there been a barrier when it comes to women with relation to either health or education? Was there anyone out there who figured that there was a loophole in the system of accessibility? Was there anyone out there? It's just a yes or a no answer. Did you all ever face that over the period of time? Has there been anyone out there who just phased out a loophole stating the fact that there is a difficulty in accessibility when it comes to education and health in the women's arena? Yeah, so I do see some yes, delayed systems in governmental institutions. Yes, right. So going back to the whole, I'll just start off. So we all know that education and health play a fundamental role in shaping individuals' pathway. And the reason I say this is because it's equivalent to fundamental rights, which I strongly believe in. But as I also hail from the Asian roots, I have always seen this culture pressure stating that, women can't really study further. And if they do, it's a disgrace to the culture as well. And at the same time, one can denote the fact that mothers usually play a role in taking care of the children. So it's basically where you actually feel that there's a basic knowledge in fundamental steps in educating your kids. But if that accessibility is not given, then you don't really get that to be showcased or displayed off to your kids or to your whole family. So we're going to see how health and education really interlinks and what we can actually really do. So firstly, coming off to with regards to, we all have seen this aspect that young girls and women out there always mention the fact that you need to be really strong, or if you are not able to actually act strong, and sometimes you might really need to open up, and there might be days when you really feel low. And if there comes a scenario like that, even after maybe 20, or maybe even during your teenage years, or like 25 or something of that, they're always called as maybe you are very weak or something like that, right? And especially this actually happens to the woman who is in the parenthood arena. So what are the things, and how can we actually advocate, and what are the systems and loopholes that needs to be eradicated here is something that we're actually looking at. So just giving a few statistics that I will be bringing about here is, we all know that with the progress of the gender gap here, for example, like Pakistan, you can just see that half the kilometer, so it's just like increase in the distance for school, and every half the distance, like half the kilometer, increase in distance to school, there is a decrease in girls enrollment by 20%. And while countries like Egypt and Indonesia, they're trying to increase the girls enrollment. So you do see a balance that some places it's actually bringing about women empowerment there, but in some places it's still working on. So there is a different rate there in education. And another example is, we do know that 2/3 of the world, which is 796 million illiterate people, which makes up the women out there. And yes, the figures can differ here and there, but it's just an approximate value that I'm giving off. But the most important thing that I'm trying to figure out here and mention the fact is, there is a loophole between the section of girls and boys out there. So the eradication of that is very important, and why is what I will be explaining in a while. How does that relate, and what are the causes and effects for the society, even when it comes to the health sector. So we also have the fact of employment. So when we talk about the employment, we can see, for example, Berlin and Tanzania, women work 17.4 and 14 hours more than the men. And when you also look at the wages, sometimes the women don't really have the sector of a labor payment extra, or there's no bonus out there, and you don't really get part-time wages and things like that. So there is another loophole there. So these causes a lot of contributory factors to mental health. These bring about contributory factors to women's health. So now I'll be just going off giving you all few examples of what are the factors causing women's health and what can we actually do. So number one is employment. So this causes out there, people like the women out there, the girls out there in rural areas, they start to stress, they start to panic, because wages is something that they're working on. And if you're not given the importance just as men are, then definitely it causes a lot of stress, depression, and results in major diseases out there. Decision making, which one of our spectator out there mentioned, which is something that we definitely do see. A good example, definitely Sri Lanka being a good example, where we do see the political representation. Even, I mean, when you check, it's only 5% of women represent the government institutions, while the men makes up the remaining, including Pakistan or different other countries. But even the other places, we do see a good improvement in New Zealand and a few other countries. So there is a change, but there's again a loophole. Now the question arises, why am I bringing about this decision making out here? Why is it important that women represent? Because sometimes when now I'm linking this to health arenas, because at times, you can never bring about and explain a perspective from a different gender perspective. So if there is a woman out there in representing how a woman would have to bring about maybe a health scenario, or maybe something that is related usually for women, it can represent the whole representation there. Because sometimes, no matter how clear you try to explain the group of men there, they're never going to understand from the representation there. So there needs to be a balance there. So that is one of the loophole that we also see here. So education in that brings about another whole scenario. And when we talk about maternal health, as we all know, and we can see that out now, it's definitely increasing in the European countries that advocacy for maternal health is bringing about. So we also see this. This is one of the places where it's a huge loophole for women when they pass off 18 years or maybe 20. So in the rural areas, they tend to be getting married early off. And definitely the places like the cities and countries, the towns, the developed countries, they have accessibility to technology, they have accessibility to education here and there. So they somehow try to get themselves how to look after or upbring their child. So before giving birth and after giving birth, or at least getting themselves consulted with the doctors, which is the normal norm. You go get yourself consulted with the doctors. I'm pretty sure most of our ancestors back then, they just got themselves maybe not the ancestors, the two generations before us just got themselves consulted by the doctors. So but now we do see youngsters out trying to learn more about themselves, trying to look after their own body. So that is something which is very important. But when we look at the rural areas, women actually don't get that whole scenario out there. So how does that affect? They do not have accessibility to technology, they do not have accessibility to education at times. So there is a whole loophole there. So if workshops or trilingual, or I mean whatever language that is accessible to them from the countries or the developed places, if that could be brought about, just explaining in normal basic language how you can actually look after your child after giving birth and before giving birth, so they don't really go through that post mortem depression after giving birth, which is one of the most important. Because when we do see, we see a lot of cases where they actually go into depression and then suicide, and then not being able to look after their kids. So this is when we do check out the statistics, women actually fall into this whole arena as well. And at the same time, we also do see HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. So when we look at this, now now the generation, definitely we do see people reading about it, and people do actually, some of them actually open up about it. But not everyone are still given the importance to bring about this or open up and talk about it. Because if someone is going through this, how can you actually support them and try to reduce that? Or what are the symptoms? What can we actually do? So examples like when we check out the WHO figures, they show that like from 25 countries, they indicate that around between the age limit of 20 and 50%, countries like Bolivia, Egypt, Indonesia, countries where there's a huge gap that there is not that's the eradications, or like the margins of understanding these two diseases is something that is very important to be understood. And then we also have again, which I just wanted to explain as before, that I just wanted to mention the fact that when you talk about depression that is after giving birth, especially for the woman, because it's a life-changing event. So during this whole process, sometimes the women, they're not really able to speak up to their own partner or their own mom or their own family members or siblings, because they're being put into this whole norm that no, you're supposed to be a strong woman, or you're supposed to be a good parent. And if you actually don't know how to handle, and if you really want to go consult someone, you're being put into that hole that you are falling into a different arena. So that needs to be eradicated. And how does that eradicate? By making and normalizing that mental health is something that is normal. Every one of us are going to go through that, but the way we go through that is very different. And I think that is how it is, but it's how you actually approach it, and how you actually look in different perspectives. So that is something that is very, very important, because when we do see the statistics, the ones who are actually suffering through this is not given a platform where they can actually talk about it. That's something that needs to be put out. And another example that I would also like to mention is the fact that we have menstrual pain. So when we talk about menstrual pain, so there are out there quite a lot of the beliefs and perceptions about menstrual pain is that it's inevitable, and it's like the main barrier to diagnosis for medical conditions. So if someone actually feels that this menstrual pain is really severe, and they go up and mention someone out there that no, this is something extreme, you're always put into that norm that you're actually no, you're actually just going through something normal that a normal girl after puberty have to go through. But not really, because sometimes if the symptoms are really, really bad, please do get yourself checked, because sometimes the health conditions are could be a likely of endometriosis, uterine fibrosis, and different cases. And when we do see the estimation that 1 in every 10 women aged between 15 to 49 is affected by endometriosis. So this actually affects the whole representation. So, and again, even though that there could be maybe there could be no cure for it, but at the same time, there are ways that you can ease symptoms. Because I'm pretty sure that every one of us here today, no one of us are going to be completely 100% healthy enough. There's going to be at least 99%. But how do you actually keep yourself healthy is mindset. Making sure that you believe that you're really healthy enough, or you make sure that this is how you have to cope up with. So that is something that is very, very important when we talk about women's health and education, because being a woman itself is the fruit for the family. And at the same time, I think having a good mindset is the pillar for anything. And then we also have now the solutions. So when we actually talk about these solutions, minute. Okay, so give me a minute here. Yeah. So now when we talk about the solutions, what are the solutions that we can actually do? I'm pretty sure every one of us here today are here because we really wanted to know something. We really wanted to educate ourselves and at least learn something from this and try to do something. And I'm pretty sure the founder of this organization is doing a great job. So what are the solutions that we can actually do? It's coming together, and that is we can always try to bring about equal participation of girls and women in education, granting women equality under all laws, making sure that you're not disadvantaging women. And examples could be like, when you have to provide parental leave and childcare opportunities for women to hinder their progression. So for example, if you're working and you feel that, okay, today is every month, or maybe at least in every 3 months, there should be a day just for one of the day that could be, left off as parental care. So they're given a paid leave for that, and they actually, take care of their child and things like that. Eliminating patriarchal attitudes, because preventing the domination of power. Definitely, women and men are equal. And when I say equal, yes, they do have their different roles and perspectives and their responsibilities. But I think if there's a balance, everything works together. More than anything, it's making sure that there is equal participation of women in education, because education links to health, and health links to family, and also health links to the society. And that's something that I will be explaining in further in few minutes. So yeah, now when I talk about heart diseases, so when it comes to the whole fact now, being starting up the NGO of Kepsis Inazalam Foundation and seeing how things work here, we do know that there are a lot of other attributes around the world. But cancer, heart disease, and mental health is something that is still it's advocating and it's being aware of. But something that we don't really see is, do we really see or have we actually heard that heart disease in women is something that is prevalent? It's something that is increasing. Not really. We do know that the first thing that we hear is, oh yes, heart disease is something that's definitely going to be in men. but not really. When we actually see, it's prime enough to remind ourselves that the life-threatening risk of cardiovascular disease in women is actually increasing. And when we actually see that, it's the woman aged less than 65 are more likely, twice as women, to die of cardiovascular diseases, and and it's equivalent to breast cancer as well when you check the statistics. So the reason for this is, as much as we know, so it's not basically that every woman out there is going to get something like that, not really. And it's just that to advocate, to make yourself know that this disease is not just something that, as long as back then, yes, it could have been just for the men out there, but now it's also increasing for the women because the lifestyle has changed. We do see that our food habits have changed, the completely diet habits, our lifestyle, everything is different now due to the development of the country. But when we actually see this, what's the loophole out there? How many of us actually know how does a heart attack work? What are the first stage symptoms? What are the symptoms of heart disease, especially when it comes to the women? I'm pretty sure not all of us, not many of us, so even when it comes to the women arena, not all of us really have read about how heart disease work, or what actually causes it, or that's the fact of actually educating ourselves in that has not actually come up. But that's something that we really need to do. So one of the things that we actually figured out when I was just having a look at the reads of, figured that you can always see that now the European Society of Cardiology has already welcomed the publication of the Lancet Women Cardiovascular Disease Commission, stating the outlining the gaps in cardiovascular disease research and prevention, treatment, and access to care for women. So the fact here is, again, there is less accessibility to women because women are not being represented in research under the cardiovascular department. And as much as they are, which is something that needs to be done. So that is a loophole which we do see. And one of the reasons that now the whole scenario, the Lancet Commission report, the Professor Barbara states the fact that we're actually calling women to actually take part in clinical trials, and clinical trial because that will actually engage and let women to know how heart diseases work. So the more you learn about it, the more education of accessibility is there, it's going to at least advocate and let the whole other group of people actually know. So that is something we do see as a loophole here. So I, at this point, would just urge everyone out there, heart disease has become something that is very as much as common as it is to anyone out there, and just exactly more like has COVID has become pandemic, but at the same time, I think as cancer is something that is increasing, I would say heart disease is something that is prevalent, but at the same time it is prevalent in women as well. But it's not a disease that you have to get yourself stressed and panic, but it's all about your lifestyle. And number one, it's all about mindset. Number two is your lifestyle, changing habits, your dietary habits, and so it's not a disease that is not curable. It is definitely preventable. And at the same time, the most important thing is every woman out there makes up a family. I mean, creates a family. I think it's very, very important for all women out there to learn and at least know what are the first aid techniques or the first aid symptoms, or at least research about that. But don't just research something that you actually don't know, because it could be wrong. So make sure that you get yourself checked with something, and then get it either by a consultant and something like that, and that will really help. So these are few things which I would also like to maybe give a small example, which I figured that how important first aid is. It's not something that only doctors or someone, the medical professional, that needs to know, but any random person out there, it's very important at least to know what are the first basic symptoms. And when we talk about the concept of how and what are the range of heart diseases, we can definitely see that, for example, in United States, we see that 1 in every 5 female dies of heart disease. But if you just check out in the, maybe the countries which is not developed, people say that, yeah, maybe you don't eat a lot of fat, or maybe there's no lot of cholesterol, or maybe there's no fatty food, you're not going to get heart disease. Yeah, that's definitely true. But at the same time, you need to make sure that it could be other factors, genetic, or there could be okay, if it's genetic, it's not still going to be prevalent, but there are other factors such as stress is one of the highest way of bringing about this. So there are ways of that, you can actually look at yourself and, work on that. And when we also look at cancer, which is something in women. So when we talk about cancer, the most important thing that I would like to bring about here is the fact that we have got different types of cancers that are prevalent, but in women, I think the first is breast cancer, and then we have the colon, and it goes on. As much as it is breast cancer is something, as much as the whole concept that it's not curable, but definitely if you get yourself diagnosed at a very early age, yes, there's so many survivors out there. So the way off again is, how do you get yourself educated with these diseases? So it's a random, I'm pretty sure all of us out there do Google up ourselves and try to get somewhere down the lane, trying to figure out different aspects. So as much as we do that, I think it's very important to take our health something very prioritized, so that helps us in keeping ourselves well enough. And so in this scenario, when we check breast cancer, though it is in 2020, we do see that 2.3 million women were diagnosed with breast cancer, and 685,000 deaths globally. So when we do see the end of 2020, there are around 7.8 million women alive who were diagnosed with breast cancer in the past 5 years. So again, when we look at this, there are quite a lot of survivors as well, the ones who actually got their self-diagnosed. So as much as we know here, when we actually check, so again, the fact that when it comes to rural areas, and most of the women out there don't really know how and what are the symptoms, what are the questions out there. So when it comes to the last stage, and then they try to somehow, and then it's too late. So again, if there was accessibility, so maybe workshops, so maybe even if there's no there is no way of technology out there, we can actually get some workshops done, or trilingual, get it accessibility, because I'm pretty sure they can understand if that's been spoken enough. So those are few things that brings about a loophole at the same time. And when the other most important thing, now why I brought about this whole urging of women links to health. As women sets up the whole family, so when you actually bring up your own child, you will have to make sure that you're well enough in a self well-being, mental well-being, and at the same time physical well-being, which is the most important thing. So when they always, just as an example that we always mention out and state the fact that when you can always get a fruit very fruitful enough when you actually get yourself getting the seed rooted properly. So the same thing out here. When you actually get yourself well, physically and mentally well-being, you're automatically, the whole family gets into a healthier family lifestyle. So the way off here again is making sure that you keep yourself well healthy, and it's the normal way off. And now, why do I say education is linked to health? The more access that you get to educate yourself in the fact that getting yourself educated doesn't mean that now if you are in a rural area and you don't really get access to education, doesn't mean that you still have newspapers. So even if you don't have newspapers, there are other things off that you can actually see and try to get. But then more than anything, it's the natural things which actually keeps yourself well, healthy. That is, immunity is something that is very important. So when we look at the research, or like the long ago ancestors, the reason that they were able to live off very happily, and I mean a healthy lifestyle, is due to the fact that immunity was one of the most important thing. And I'm pretty sure none of us, especially when it comes to now, most of us don't really consider that. So these are a few things that needs to be considered and put into when considering what are the contributory factors and what we can actually do, and making these loopholes, what I mentioned back then, as normal as it is, and being able to open up and bring about as a platform. Okay, so this is what we really need to do, is something that needs to be considered. Yeah, I think I have the questions out here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think I do have a few questions. Should I? I think.
I can just read them out too if that's
Yes. Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. Great.
All right, great. So the first question here is, what are some small things we can do to reduce the gender gap between male and female?
Right. So the first important thing that you can actually do is reducing that could be obviously bringing about the whole concept that explaining and trying to bring about the fact that, okay, so gender gap can be done in ways like education, political representation. So you will have to get a whole group of people to explain. So if you're going to do this in a group of in your own neighborhood, you need to get a group of girls out there and bring about maybe create a workshop or a proposal or something like that, and state the fact that why gender equality gap is causing the loopholes in women. And when you do check, you can see that, for example, labor, employment, that how this affects the women's health, right? That is number one. And then number two, what are the effect on the child then after that? And then when we talk about maybe we talk about the fact of representation. So when you don't have a woman out there in your representation of the government institution, what are the loopholes there? You don't really have a girl out there or a woman out there to talk in respect of whatever the scenario that a woman can only understand, and not a men out there, no matter how much you try to explain. So those are few things that you can actually do, and get in a whole group of people out there who would actually look for these calls, and at the same time, the gender equality, if it's related to the health, get few of the kids I mean the youngsters out there to work on and research about this, about how important health is, and what are the things that is affecting the woman out there, and it's not being accessible. So if that could be done and created and brought that and explained, so this is how we can actually bring forward, then I think that will bring about a difference. It goes by step by step, because there's no way off by just explaining, and I don't think anyone can actually understand that. Yeah, so that is what I would recommend. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. The second question we have here is, how can we educate others and bring awareness to topics like cancer and heart disease in women?
Yeah, so definitely, I'm pretty sure education is accessible. Like, I mean, it's technology, right? That is number one. Through social media, I'm pretty sure everyone, even now when I talk about rural areas, everyone has it, but it's just that not like, at least I'm pretty sure out of at least 50, it has come to at least 50% out of 100 in rural areas do have technology. So the best way off is platforms. That is number one. Conversations, awareness, research on that, and contribution is something that woman has to bring about. Yeah. So I mean, advocating on that is something that is very important, and most importantly also survivors, if you could get someone out there, as much as hard it is to get them off to actually speak about it, but maybe you can get someone out there to I'm pretty sure one or two would actually like to talk about what they actually went through, and they wouldn't want someone else to go through that whole process. And more than anything, I would recommend trying to get consensus from the parents, consultants onto the first aid, right? Well, of heart diseases. Now, heart disease is something that if you know how to get yourself, that is number one. And so first aid techniques, and number two is emergency contact numbers, hospitals. So, those are a few things that if that could be created and advocated, most importantly, because we do know that we are advocating more on what the disease is and all those things, but do make sure that advocation on emergency contact numbers, who are the people that you can actually keep on track, and ambulance numbers and hospitals, and if those things are actually brought in consideration, because sometimes it's a matter of 2 minutes saving your life. Yeah.
I think that's such good advice. I think that everybody should need to know their local contacts. Yeah. Another question we have here is, a lot of women don't have their family by their side, and this is a very important factor into their mental health. So, how should we fix this if they don't have a family to support them?
Yes. So if that's the case, if there is something of that scenario, um, then the way off is definitely, first thing off is, usually, as much as we know that, 90% definitely gets their support from family, but not always. Not everyone tries to get it from families as well. So it's always better to get yourself like more of advocate, like more of trying to journal, or like maybe once in a while, getting yourself, put yourself into a mindset, because it's the mindset which is the most important thing for mental health, right? So making sure that you get yourself, maybe get yourself connected with one of the psychologists once a month or twice a month and something like that, or get someone where you can actually vent out anything that is. It's normal to consult a psychologist once a year. It's normal to talk to someone and vent out. These are things that needs to be brought in. So if there's no family out there, either get some of your close friends if you want, and if you feel that's really hard, then get one of the psychologists on board with you. And if you feel that okay, you don't really have an accessibility for that, then there is online, there's free services, there's NGOs out there, so that way off, and that will definitely bring about the whole concept. But more than anything, it's self-love, right? So if you really believe that this is despite anything you can go through, so you will have to keep that mindset that life goes on, but you will have to go through. So I think the most important thing is self-love. Yeah.
So this one here is a bit of a long question, so I'll give you a bit of context behind it. So it says, I think women in urban areas are not willing to come out of their shell despite having the opportunities. My question is, you mentioned rural women and women not having access to technology. What are practical steps we can take to help them spread awareness amongst themselves?
Okay, so now when we talk about the practical steps, right? So so you have to first figure out where do you actually want to start your the whole concept of the fact of like neighborhood. And so in that whole part of the fact, you will need to get a few you might have to start a proposal out there, like a whole group of thing. And if there's no accessibility to accessibility technology, there's still accessibility to enter that village, accessibility to enter that place, right? So it all starts. So if you feel that okay, this is what you really want to do, or even as our whole youngsters out there, so what could be done is, I'm pretty sure not everyone out of there in the whole urban area is not going to have, so at least one or two will have social media, right? So if you try to get in touch with one of them and then try to create a workshop, right? Go there, create workshops, get people off there and explain the importance of how do you get these things eradicated, or how do you get these things in. So that's the way of. And most important thing is getting it in a language that they understand. And now when I say there's no accessibility to education, or maybe they might be illiterate as well, but they can actually understand. So that is always a thing. So field work is something that is very important, but I think that will definitely help people out there. And if also government institutions, so I mean getting off with the main municipal of the specific district or whatever scenario of that, and trying to help that off, trying to get engaged with NGOs in a specific arena, right? So if there might be definitely NGOs, so even if it's an NGO from the central country, you can, central capital, you can ask them that, this is what you really want to do, and try to get engaged with them, and get on board. And so that's something that could be done. So those are a few things that needs to be created off. Yeah.
Definitely, that's great advice. How can mental health be improved if women face challenges accessing services and immediate help?
Could you repeat the question again, please?
No problem. How can mental health be improved if women face challenges accessing services and immediate help? Help.
Yeah, so basically for this so basically the fact is accessing services in a fact that you I think the line got cut. Can you again just the connection was not clear enough. I just heard the half the question.
How can mental health be improved if women face challenges in accessing services and
Yeah.
immediate help?
Right. So here you can actually get yourself created in a save. Again, it's definitely through again NGOs, and the fact that, like, getting yourself immediate help would be psychologists, right? So and at the same time here, consultant. So when you get yourself into some consultant there, you can't you really need to make sure that you really like that consultant as well. Immediate help will be something that you will have to improvise, opening up, venting out, talking about the scenarios and the problems and whatever issues that you're actually going through. So that could be immediate help number one. Number two, immediate help could be talking to someone, even your close friend or something, but someone who you can really trust, right? I'm pretty sure the last resort sometimes are usually the parents, so no one actually goes on to that. But if you do have a very supportive and open parents, then definitely that's one of the best thing to do. But always, if you feel that, okay, there is a loophole in your whatever scenarios, if it's in the labor, if it's into this arena, the best thing first is go talk to someone who is not into anything, not involved into anything, that's into a whole different arena. Open up, went to them, and that is definitely someone onto the consultant, like professional psychologist, so they will guide you through the whole process. Because don't really go and do some go and ask someone out there who's not who's not certified enough, because sometimes you don't really know, they can misuse the whole concept of whatever information that you're giving or what you're actually going through, as times are very uncertain. Yeah. And one of the most important thing I would also say is when you the immediate help, I would say, is never ever I'm pretty sure not I'm pretty sure that when you do see medicines or something like that, I have got few calls calling up and mentioning that I was planning on doing this, so I was trying to do this, I had these thoughts coming up. So whenever a thought like that, whenever a negative thought comes up, just get yourself and write it down somewhere, and cross it off. It really works. If not, when that negative thought comes up, make sure that you're writing a journal and, try to cross, and every negative thought that comes up, you get a whole, maybe black star, or I don't know, anything that you really want to do. So that will actually help, because these are few things that within my whole close friends that I have seen, and it really worked. So as much as I say again, self-love is something that is very important, because as much as cliche as it sounds, it's something that is very, very important. Yeah.
How can you help women believe in themselves and accept what they are?
Yeah, so again, I strongly believe the fact that you have examples right now. In order to, it's always like this, you will have to go through a lot of a whole, in order to achieve something or in order to go to great heights, you will have to break down really, really, really bad. But going through that whole process is definitely going to be hard. Sometimes you do it alone. Sometimes, you just you can't really, get through it. But ways of doing it is, number one, environment. Go to the nature area, right? That is number one. Number two is keep yourself, mindful sessions and you have these binaural beats, right? Yoga therapy, meditation, journaling, right? Look into the mirror first at the beginning of the day and, just say that you're really proud of yourself. These are a few things that, as much as cliche as it sounds, but it really works. And more than anything, don't let anyone, you have to be, I think anything is possible as long as you believe that you can actually do something, right? This is what you really want to do, or this is what you're really happy of, or this is what makes me, right? Because if you really bring about, if there is a negative thought that comes off, what you could do is just, again, as I mentioned, write it down and crush it off and change that sentence into a positive. So if it says I cannot do this, cut off that cannot and say I can, and keep writing it for at least 10 times, and you will see, by just writing it down, you will just see the confidence that it turns into. If it actually works, just do let me know, but I'm pretty sure it definitely will. So that is something, as much as they say, practice keeps you getting more into consideration of self-confidence. That is something that is very important. Yeah. And more than anything, I forgot to mention, healthy diet, right? Because everything that you eat is what makes you up, right? So the more healthier diet that you have, the better it is. Don't and Make sure well-being, that is your mental and physical well-being with exercise, is something that is being done. And at the same time, make sure that you have a whole group of sessions where you actually talk with people and move around, or have a good environment session, a day out with your friends, or even like going to the nature or a walk, because though at least once in a week, which will actually help. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions to improve mental health on a national level?
Suggestions would be, so basically what we plan on doing is, the most important thing at this point is, you will have to get yourself, get everything. So number one, national way is, you will have to get few reforms done, right? Reforms so that is something our organization is doing, right? Capsicina Zealand Foundation is working on the Mental Health Act reforms, and at the moment we're planning on working on the Sri Lankan reforms, and then we're trying to get other countries on board. So if there's anyone out there who's willing to join and help us out, or get to know more about it, and learn about it, definitely y'all on board. Y'all can actually give us your thoughts and ideas about it. And so that is something that we're actually doing. So number one is getting the whole representation of a country is definitely through the judicial, that is through the governmental institution. But at the same time, before that, you can have different campaigns in different countries, different arenas, different districts. So that is how it will go in national levels. Yeah.
I know this might be a repeat of a question, but you can summarize what you said. How can a woman develop confidence in herself, especially when she is surrounded by negativity?
Okay, so especially when she's
surrounded by negativity.
Okay, so when she's surrounded with negativity, what you could actually do is, it's definitely hard. You can't really get through this whole fact that, okay, people actually telling me this, and do I do that, or do I do this, and things like that. So first thing that you need to put into your head is this what you really want to do, and why? Right? And is it going to make me happy? As long as it makes you happy, you should be able to go through that path. right? So that is the number one. And definitely the second thing is, as long as it doesn't hurt any one of your loved ones out there, right? So because always something that I really believe is, do not hurt someone out there purposely, because it will come back in different ways, right? So that is two things that you need to remember. Do something that you, if it really makes you happy, and at the same time, so if you feel that there's negativity coming around there, but then this is what you really want to do, or if you find yourself, okay, this is toxic enough, this friendship is really toxic. Mind you do have a lot of one of the most researched, Aaron, you could say, within friendship, within the girl arena, girl sectors, or girl gangs and women friend circle, is gaslighting, which you call. So they actually, what they do is they try to make you feel very inferior or superior. You don't really look good at that, or you don't really look good at this, or something like that. So that actually puts you down. So that is what you call negativity, that is what you call toxic, and everything off there. So first thing off is remember, put these three things into your head and state that. Do they really is it important to have them in your life? Number one. Is the outweighing balance, whatever they're saying is actually affecting you, or is it actually making you happy, right? And if you feel that it's not really important enough, please cut them off, and you will see the difference, right? I would always recommend, please cut them off. If there is a toxic, even a friendship or a relationship or anything of them, before you take the decision, just make sure that if that negativity keeps coming over a year, or keeps coming and actually messes up your mindset, then it's not good for your mental health, and it's not worth being around the whole toxic environment. I completely forgot about the fact that confidence as well. So when you come about, again, confidence, how do you keep yourself confident enough? You have to cut all the toxic energy. Energy is what makes you. Please surround yourself with people who motivate you, surround you with good omen, right? Good blessings, because that will actually lift you. So if you find yourself, okay, there's a whole group of people who's not actually supporting you in way, please move away. So that's one thing. Yeah.
So we have a question here, and it is, I'll give a bit of context behind it. I have a friend going through an abusive relationship. What makes everything worse is that she has children, so the limits of her leaving because of the fear that she will be judged. She hasn't gone to therapy, and it is affecting the way that she lives. How do we change this trope of women staying in relationships because of the
Right.
children?
So yeah, so for this whole concept, so it's just like, I definitely can't give a, like, whole concept of because I will have to, you'll have to actually analyze what and where and how. But just to state off, is definitely one way of is coming to a negotiation, compromising statement, stating the fact that the in between of the relationship, there is a whole concept of children out there, and so we make up a family, we create a family. So children are the building blocks here between both the partners, right? So you will have to compromise and state that now whatever affects, whatever is actually happening between both of y'all are something that y'all will have to decide. And here when it comes to children, so it's not easy as much as it's said, right? So if you're in an abusive relationship, either one of your both of y'all have to actually open up and speak up and try to eradicate it. But if it's not possible, and if it still goes on, then the way off is definitely to take some space off, but keep in touch with the children. Like, I mean, if you do want to keep the relationship, but then there should be maybe a barrier, like, this is what I will be doing and this is what he will be doing, kind of thing. And so there'll be roles and responsibilities that will be divided, and the place or the loophole where actually the arguments are actually started, so that will not be discussed. And if that actually works, then it works. And if you feel that is not really working on, then I think it will have to go through the other processing. But definitely don't ever let your children actually speak on favor of that whole process, because it's always better to try to sort it from the parenthood arena, yeah, until it's on the last stage. Yeah.
So this is one of the last questions that we have. Oh, never mind. No, no, okay. So this is going to be one of the last two questions that we have, and it is,
Yeah.
if someone suffers from a mental disorder, how can she overcome it with essentials other than medication?
So a mental disorder, yeah, what is the question again?
If someone suffers from a mental disorder, how can she overcome it without medication?
Yes, definitely. Without medication, there are ways off as well. So again, as I mentioned off, is number one is mindset therapy, right? So you have art therapy, you have color therapy, you have yoga, meditation, and before anything, it's about setting off yourself away from all the negativity, social media, all these unwanted stuff, right? For a while, get into a whole you call it as the Zen mode, right? Like, it's the whole complete different mode that you go into. And we can also work at that point, right? You actually work at that whole scenario that, okay, so you work on something that you're really passionate. So I would recommend, when anyone is going through a whole healing process, get yourself, because I'm pretty sure everyone of us do have something that we really like. Some of us like doodling, some of us like researching, some of us like, being with friends or whatever it is. Go do that right at that point and keep yourself eased off. And during the process and period of time, you'll definitely find something else that really awakens you, that this is what you really want to get into yourself, like the purpose of what you're really here for, right? So that is something that you will actually work on. And most importantly, when it comes to keeping yourself away from this, is keeping eating what is right. So if you want to go vegan, keep yourself. So that's what I mentioned again. Mindset is equivalent to what you eat, right? So everything that you eat is what will keep yourself properly well-being, right? And more than anything, I would also recommend exercise, or going out, reading, journaling, music, right? Do not listen to music that is going to mess up, but like binaural beats and things like that. Get some activity books, try to sort that out as well. So during that process, it's definitely going to help, right? But also, what you could do is, if that keeps coming again and again, make sure you write it down again. Don't, like, if it keeps coming, like, it brings about back trauma, then if you feel that it's not right enough, then you can actually consult someone, right? But again, I wouldn't say that you really need to consult someone again, because I strongly believe, until it goes to a really hard stage, like to the latest, then you can actually work on. As much as easy as it is, maybe people might actually say that, okay, it's easy to say but not really practical enough to do. Definitely, and I understand. So whenever something like that comes up again, like, okay, it's really hard at this point, right? Just remember again everything, like, again, remember something that go write it down somewhere, and try to figure out, if what is this, if you really wanted to do something like this, would it be great if you're here, or something of there. And make sure that you're surrounded with positive environment. You can always keep your wallpapers or anything out there with positive affirmations. So I would recommend positive affirmations actually work. So that could be something that y'all can actually do. Yeah.
So this is the last question that we have here, and it is, when you're healing from depression, how do you build trust with your better half?
With your better
Half.
okay, so here again, at the same time, so yeah, so again, it's the fact that, like, I think you need to be whole enough to uh, be whole for another person, right? So that is the whole concept that I would recommend, right? So first, you need to be whole enough to get yourself into a whole another scenario. But what I would state is, you can always do what you really want to do, right? Go through that whole, when you're going through that whole process, but building trust with the other person is which so make sure, as long as it is not something where you're codependent, you're dependent on each other. So obviously, despite the fact of, like, venting out, that's completely okay. But anything else, like, when you're actually working on something, even, okay, so as long as you both are doing work, that's completely okay. But sometimes all that you need to realize is, if you can actually sit and do maybe 5 minutes of a specific thing without having others around, right? So even your better half or anyone out there. So if that whole process works, then you're actually going in a process which is good enough. You can actually build trust and things like that. But if you feel that you can't really cope up with that, like you can't really do something without your better half, then I would recommend you to first focus on yourself and then get into building trust with the other person. Because as much as I strongly believe no one else can bring in happiness for you first, then you have to first find happiness in yourself and then get into the whole. But definitely, so it's basically like, yes, relationships make yourself happy, yes, but at the same time you should be able to look at yourself and say, okay, I'm really proud of myself, and you also have others to say that. So before any other relationship, make sure that you have that relationship with yourself, saying that I'm proud of myself, I really love myself. So, and if you're able to do that, and then that's definitely great, and you can you're in the right path of building trust with the better half. So yeah, that's something that you will have to consider while going through that process. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this amazing session. I think all of us have learned so much about the importance of mental health and how it's so important to take care of your physical well-being as well as your mental well-being. So if you need any more details, please visit our website, www.spunkgo.com. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. And it was definitely a great pleasure. And I hope it brought in a lot of info that could be bringing about a difference.